This episode is brought to you by Light and Sound Media, where we have courses teaching you how to make better lighting and sound for your videos. Link down below. I have not used all of the shotgun microphones in the world, but I have used a good number of them. And this was requested that I give my rankings of the best microphones, shotgun microphones specifically, in the less than $300 range, the $300 to $500 range, the $500 to $1,000, and above $1,000. So that's what we're going to do here. All of these are XLR output microphones, so these are not like your camera topper, Video Mic Pros or anything like that. These have XLR outputs to go into your field recorder, audio field recorder, your camera, or perhaps a USB audio interface, and then from there into your computer or a mobile device. Ranking these microphones is purely subjective. It is only my experience and my opinion, nothing more. If you disagree, that's completely fine. We can still be friends. Also, you should just use my opinions here as a single data point. And if you're really serious, especially about buying one of the more expensive microphones, do some more research, listen to more samples, listen to more people's opinions. That'll be useful for you. Now, I've done detailed reviews on most of these microphones. And for those that I haven't, I will at least let you hear that microphone in this particular case. Some of the less expensive microphones in particular, I don't have on hand anymore, so I'll have to send you over to the detailed review for you to get an audio sample of those. But for those that I do have, I'll let you know when you're listening to that. So for right now, we are listening to the DPA 4017B. It is a ridiculously expensive well, not the most ridiculously expensive shotgun microphone, but it's out of reach of most hobbyists, certainly, or people that are creators. We'll come to that one in a little bit. And I'll put links to each of the detailed reviews down below. So if you want to learn more about a particular microphone, you can do that. So let's jump in and let's look at the category of less than $300 microphones. I have 4 different microphones in this category. You are not listening to any of them right now. And in fact, I don't have any of these on hand. I have given them all away or sold them or whatever. So actually, I gave all these away. Number 4, coming in at number 4, this is my least favorite of the 4. And actually, this is one, unfortunately, I do not recommend. It is the Godox VDS M3. It's from a company that makes lights, Godox, that makes some great lights. They're new at the audio game, and it kind of shows. I gave them some feedback. There's lots of self-noise on this microphone relative to the others. A relatively thin sound, didn't sound great. Sounds okay, but not the best sounding, especially for the originally $300 asking price. It's now come down to about $200, so that's good. It also has a non-user replaceable battery in it. On the bright side, it does have a high-pass filter, and it does have a presence boost filter now, or a presence boost. Those actually can be useful, and we're going to talk about that for all these microphones. They're useful. High-pass filter is useful for getting rid of low-frequency rumble, maybe even help a little bit with wind. And then the presence boost, if you do put the microphone in a wind protection contraption of any sort, whether it's foam or a blimp-style cover, a lot of times the high frequencies get attenuated some. They are cut off some. And a presence boost helps compensate for that. So those are the advantages of that. So that's my number 4 microphone. Again, not my favorite, and I would not necessarily recommend it if you don't already own it. If you own it and you're happy with it, keep making great sound. Number 3 is the Movo X3 II. So it's the second version of this microphone. This is a very affordable microphone that comes in at $130 US. Quite rich sound. It sounds kind of broadcasty, I would say. A lot of bass richness to it when it's phantom powered. However, you can put a AA battery in it and use an XLR to 3.5 millimeter adapter output to get it into a camera that has only a 3.5 millimeter input. It does not sound great then, in my experience. So just so you're aware, if that was your use case, wouldn't necessarily recommend it in that case. But it does come with a shock mount that's decent. It does come with a high-pass filter, and again, $130. It's a pretty good deal for that. So if you're in a very, very tight budget, that's a decent option. Number 2 in this category is the Rode NTG2. It was my first shotgun microphone ever. It is a good microphone. However, it needs a ton of gain. So you have to use it with a recorder that can supply a good bit of gain. I found myself regularly applying 55, maybe even more dB of gain. So if you can supply that comfortably with a quality preamplifier or audio recorder, then it sounds quite good via XLR. However, if you try to adapt it, the 3.5 millimeter, and power it with there's a slot for a AA battery in this one as well, I have never gotten it to sound good on doing that, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for that purpose. It does have a high-pass filter, does not have a presence boost, and it is priced at $269 US. All right, the number one option in this category, less than $300 microphones, to me is the Audio-Technica AT875R. It comes in at $169. It's a little bit on the bright side, but overall sounds quite good. The price, of course, is a huge benefit. There is no high-pass filter, there's no presence boost, but it's just a really good sounding microphone for that price. Audio-Technica tends to do that. They have microphones that sound pretty good at a really good price, so this is no exception. So I would say in the less than $300 range, the Audio-Technica AT875R is my favorite. You have not heard any of these microphones up until this point. All of these have been on the DPA 4017B, but if you do want to hear them, be sure to check out the detailed reviews down below. All right, next category is $300 to less than $500, and this is the biggest category, and I'm going to start with number 9. That is the Rode NTG4 Plus. This one is a microphone that sounds thin. I don't have this one anymore. I gave it away. You're not listening to it now. This is still a DPA 4017B. I don't love that it has a non-user replaceable battery as well, so at some point you're going to have to send that into Rode for service. It does have a high-pass filter and a presence boost switch, and it can self-power with that inbuilt battery, but it just is not the greatest sounding microphone. If you get it up really close and you get some proximity effect, it starts to sound more neutral, but that's not generally how we use shotgun microphones unless you're doing voiceover up at close range. So that's my number 9 pick. Number 8. Number 8 is the Azden SGM 3500. This microphone is pretty good. It sounds mid-rangey. That most Azden microphones do tend to sound somewhat mid-rangey to me, and by that I mean it kind of emphasizes the mid-ranges, but it doesn't seem to have a lot of bass response, or it actually can have a little bit on the higher end as well. So, but in any case, it sounds okay. Does not have a high-pass filter or a presence boost, and it's priced at $499 US. So the reason I rated this at number 8 was that it seems like a lot of money for a microphone that's kind of mediocre. It's better than the NTG4, but I'm not even sure it's better than the Audio-Technica AT875R. Anyway, that's my thought on that. Number 7 is the Sony ECM-674. It's a decent, if mid and bright sounding microphone. Does need some EQ on my voice for sure. Does include a high-pass filter, and it does not have a presence boost filter. It comes in at $325 US. Again, just wasn't the most amazing sound right out of the gate, right out of the recorder, but not a horrible microphone either. So that's what happens when you start getting up into this price range. There are some that just don't perform very well, but a lot of them are pretty decent. Most of them, I would say, are pretty decent. So in any case, that's where we're at there. Number 6 on the list is the Azden SGM 250H. This is actually a better voiced Azden microphone than most of them that I've used. It does tend to get a little sibilant for sibilant voices, but it works really, really well for voices that are not sibilant or that are a little bit more dry or dark. It is less mid-rangey than the SGM 3500, so I like its sound quite a bit better. Pretty good microphone overall. Does have a high-pass filter, does not have a presence boost filter, and this one comes in at $329, which seems like a really fair price for that. All right, next up, number 5 on the list in the $300 to less than $500 range is the DEITY S-Mic 2S. Now, disclaimer here, DEITY actually has a newer generation of this microphone. I have not tried it yet. It's the DEITY S-Mic 3S. This is S standing for the short version. Let me just tell you about the version 2. I don't know what the version 3 is like. It's probably pretty similar, but it's got some new electronics or something. I think the body is aluminum now instead of brass. This one I think is brass. It's a shorter version of the S-Mic 2 with a wider polar pattern. Overall, it's a pretty good sounding microphone. Wasn't the cleanest mic, but also not the noisiest in terms of self-noise. Comes in at $319 US. You can still buy the version 2. I guess they may either have some stock or they haven't discontinued it, but pretty good microphone there. Next up at number 4 is the Rycote HC-15 short shotgun microphone. You are hearing that microphone right now. I have it boomed just above me here. And this is a good, I think, generally neutral sounding microphone. Good self-noise performance. Has a wider polar pattern as a relatively short shotgun microphone. That's generally something you need to understand, is that shotgun microphones are defined by their interference tubes. And when they're shorter, they tend to have a wider polar pattern. When they have longer interference tubes, they have a narrower polar pattern. So you get more isolating power, so to speak, with the longer shotgun microphones. But on the other hand, the wider ones, the shorter shotgun microphones, tend to be a little more forgiving. This one does not have a high-pass filter. It does not have a presence boost filter, but it's a really solid microphone. It comes in at $449 US. And again, that was number 4. So Rycote HC-15. All right, moving up the list to number 3, we have the Sennheiser MKE 600 shotgun microphone. That's what you're hearing right now. We have it boomed just above here. And we have the gain set to 47 dB on the Sound Devices Mix Pre 3. Okay, this is very popular with creators. It's a much more affordable Sennheiser model, of course. It sounds a bit more, it has a nice sound overall. I think it has that Sennheiser sound. It has a pretty nice rich low end, very crisp high end. I will say this one is, some people call this, oh, this is the poor man's, or this is like the 99% of the Sennheiser MKH 416, but at way less money. It's $329. It does sound a little bit more brittle to me than the Sennheiser MKH 416. So it's not quite the same sound as that kind of classic microphone, but for its price, it is good. You can also power it via AA batteries, and it sounds pretty good going into a camera that has a 3.5 millimeter input. In fact, it comes with the XLR to 3.5 millimeter adapter that you'll need to do that. And it has a not the best shock mount, but something of a shock mount you can put on top of your camera as well. So at $329, it does have a high pass filter. It does not have a presence boost filter, but overall, a really solid showing from Sennheiser here. One of my top 3 in this price range. Okay, coming in at number 2 in this category, $300 to less than $500, is the DEITY S-Mic 2. Again, older version. They have a brand new version, version 3. I have not tried that one yet, but the DEITY S-Mic 2 I have always liked because, number 1, it is a really solid microphone. It just seems durable. It's got a brass body. It's a little on the heavier side. It's a medium-sized shotgun microphone. It does have a wider pickup pattern than the Sennheiser MKH 416, which we're going to get to a little bit later. Good sound, slightly less colored than the Sennheiser MKH 416. We'll talk about that more a little bit as well. Has a little bit of water resistance, so if it does get wet, it shouldn't ruin the microphone necessarily. It may not work in the moment, but if you dry it out, it should still be good. No high pass or presence boost filters, and it comes in at $359 US. So really, really solid microphone from DEITY. All right, and number 1 in the $300 to less than $500 category is the Rode NTG5. So this is the lowest priced RF bias microphone. Most condenser microphones, shotgun microphones, are condenser microphones. Most of them have a DC bias operating principle. The Rode NTG5, as well as some of the Sennheisers, the higher end Sennheisers, the MKH, use what's called an RF bias principle. Slightly different approach. The nice thing about RF bias is that if you're working in a really humid environment and you get a little condensation on the capsule, they can still continue to work, whereas a DC bias microphone will start to crackle and make some other weird noises and not generally work that well. So this is one of the lowest price in that particular category. The Sennheiser MKH 416 is another one that is also RF bias, by the way. This is a shorter shotgun microphone than the Sennheiser MKH 416, so it is a wider polar pattern, wider pickup pattern. Overall, a pretty neutral sound. There is no high-pass filter, and there is no presence boost, but it does come with a shock mount, which is quite nice. This one comes in at just barely squeaks in at $499, but it is my number 1 choice in this category. Now, I do need to address something. Early on, it seems like there was a lot of noise on the internet that people were getting copies of these that they claimed didn't work. They had problems, RF interference issues. I did not experience that firsthand, so I can't speak to that. But my guess is that Rode had a bad manufacturing batch that went out. I haven't heard nearly as much about it more recently. Obviously, it's not a brand new microphone anymore. It's been out for about 6 years, but Overall, I've had a really good experience with it, so I've been very, very happy with my Rode NTG5, and that's why I put it as number 1 in this category. Incidentally, you are hearing the Rode NTG5 right now, and through the whole part of this where I talked about the NTG5. Okay, now we're moving up into the next category. This is the $500 to less than $1,000 category. And you are actually, because I don't have this microphone on hand anymore, we're still hearing the Rode NTG5. But my number 4 pick in this category is the Azden SGM 3500L. Now, you'll remember I didn't rate the 3500 earlier very well. It was actually pretty close to the bottom of the list. But the L is a little bit more interesting. It's a longer shotgun microphone, so it's very isolating. So of those that I've used, it was one of the more isolating microphones, meaning it had a very, very focused polar pattern. And that meant it had longer reach. So I view this one as kind of sort of a specialty microphone. It comes in at $549 US, so it's kind of at the bottom of that price range here. Again, much more directional. The L stands for long. Wouldn't be my first choice for most cases, but I would consider it as a pretty decent kind of specialty microphone if you need more reach. It does not have a high-pass filter and does not have a presence boost. Next up, we have the Rode NTG3. That's what you're hearing right now, Into the Sound Devices Mix Pre 3. This is a microphone that was developed quite some time ago. This has been out for a number of years. I think when it was first made, it was designed to be very much like the Sennheiser MKH 416, but less expensive. And indeed, it comes in at $699 US. It has, I think, kind of a very rich low end, perhaps a little woolly at times, depending on how close you use it to your talent. But I like, at distance, it holds onto that bass pretty decently. It's not quite as bright as the Sennheiser MKH 416, I don't think. It doesn't have as much of that crisp high end. Maybe I'm wrong on that. You be the judge. Use your ears. It does not have a high-pass filter. It does not have a presence boost. It is a pretty beefy mic. It's a what I would call a medium shotgun mic. Solid build. So it's a little bit heavier out on the end of a boom pole all day, but really good microphone for the money. For that price, I feel like you're getting a really great microphone. Incidentally, just like the NTG5 and the Sennheiser MKH 416, this is a RF bias microphone, so you get some of those benefits if you're working in a really humid environment. If any sort of, again, moisture sort of condenses on the microphone capsule, this is probably going to keep going and sound great. Next up, number 2 in this category of, again, 500 to less than 1,000 is the DPA 2017. This is one of the newest microphones that I've used. It came out, I believe, last year in 2024 or maybe late 2023. In any case, this is a lower cost version of the 4017B. In some ways, you can think of it in that way. This one comes in at $995. It's not the same microphone as the 4017B, and we'll talk about that microphone in just a little bit. This one has different electronics. It's not modular, meaning you can't disconnect the capsule from the preamplifier and swap out the preamplifiers. But it does have a good balanced sound. I borrowed this one, so I don't have it on hand, regrettably, but if you go check out the detailed review, you can get a listen to it. Right now, you're still hearing the Rode NTG3. It does not have a high-pass or a presence boost filter, and as I mentioned before, it comes in at $995. It is just a really, really solid microphone. It's one of those kind of microphones. When you get up into this category, most of these, I'd say the NTG3 certainly, the DPA 2017, definitely the type of microphone you can buy and use your entire career if you take care of it. So, DPA 2017. Now, number 1 in this category of $500 to less than $1,000 is the Sennheiser MKH 416. Longtime favorite. This microphone design, well, the first iteration of the Sennheiser MKH 416 was designed and released in the 1970s. It's gone through a few iterations. Now it's the 48-volt phantom-powered version. And this one comes in at $999. A lot of people love the sound of this microphone. I would not call this microphone neutral. I would call it colored, but in a way that most people enjoy. It's a sound that has plenty of bass, and it's a little crisper on the high end, with a little bit of a scoop in the middle, sounds like to me. So that's it. I have it actually not because I use it a lot, except for as a reference microphone, because again, so many people like the sound of this microphone. It is heavier than most modern microphones. They called them short shotguns back then, but it was actually more what I would call in today's world medium shotgun microphone. And it does not have a high pass or presence boost. It's quite directional. That is one thing that is kind of a little bit of a standout for its size. It tends to be more directional than a lot of other microphones, so it has a tighter polar pattern, if you will. And that's the Sennheiser MKH 416. You're hearing it right now. Again, I use it as a reference just because it's so popular in terms of how it sounds. So that's everything for the $500 to less than $1,000 price range. We have one microphone in the greater than $1,000 price range, and that is the DPA 4017B, which we've talked about a little bit. This is the microphone that I use when I'm recording outdoors for any sort of commercial shoot or paid job that I'm doing. It's substantially smaller and lighter than the Sennheiser MKH 416. It has a more neutral, I would say more faithful sound. It may not make everybody's voice sound great, but it actually is probably pretty true to how everybody's voice sounds. So you may not like the sound of my voice as much on this microphone as you might on others, but it's a really good starting point and it captures things very faithfully. It does have a high pass and a presence boost. In addition, this is I think it's the only one that we talked about here that is a modular design. What I mean by that is you can unscrew the preamplifier module from the shotgun capsule and interference tube module. So they're separate and you can swap in different preamplifiers. This one, the B preamplifier, does have the high pass filter and the presence boost. So I do end up using the presence boost when I have the microphone in a blimp style cover. So usually a Rycote Cyclone if there's a lot of wind, or a Rycote Nano Shield if there's less wind. Now, one of the things that I can say about most shotgun microphones relative to non-shotgun pencil condenser style microphones is that shotgun microphones tend to have pretty substantial coloration for sounds that are not directly on axis. So sounds that are coming from behind the microphone or off to the side of the microphone. While these are more directional and they tend to attenuate the off-axis sound better, the sound that you do get from the sides tends to be pretty colored. It doesn't sound natural. And the thing about the DPA 4017B is while it's not the most directional microphone, doesn't have the tightest polar pattern, it does do pretty well in terms of off-axis coloration in the context of shotgun microphones in general. So again, if you really want a really clean off-axis sound, you probably need to move to a small pencil condenser microphone of some sort. But this microphone does well overall. Now, when I bought this microphone some number of years ago, now probably 7 years ago, I think it was $1,700. It's now $2,100. So it's not a microphone that is cheap by any means in terms of its price. So overall, again, if you want to dive into any of the individual microphones, we have links down below. We also have a little table over an Airtable you can take a look at where I talk about, I can have all my notes and the rankings here. Again, if this doesn't match up with your experience, that's okay. We all have different experience. We can still be friends even if we have a different opinion, but hopefully that gives you some context if you haven't had a chance to use a bunch of these microphones. So get out there, make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again next week.